everyone, it's Sevi. Ushi the Demon Exorcising Bull is having his banner rerun soon. Since he came out, he's been known for busting out great dance moves and dealing more damage than Zhongli's Meteor. Really, if you're planning on pulling for Ushi, then just do it. But as for his Unga Bunga bull-chucking Oni, I do have some considerations about that guy's gameplay, build, and current place in the meta that will hopefully prepare you for his arrival, or even help your decision if you're still on the fence about pulling him. I'll also have my full guide on him soon, so stay tuned. With that, let's talk about the top things to consider before pulling for Itto. Let's start by looking at what Itto offers as a Geo DPS, which is pretty much his only possible role. Being Geo means Itto does not have access to reactions that most other elemental DPSs have. Despite that, it doesn't hold him back from having a potentially high damage ceiling thanks to his raw damage multipliers, build options, and perhaps, most notably, his teammates. If we're only evaluating Itto himself, perhaps his biggest disadvantage is how squishy he can be due to him taking extra damage in his burst form, but that's really easy to address with shielding, dodging, or healing. Rather, it's his team considerations in particular that are significantly tied to his viability as a DPS. One huge consideration here is that Goro is almost inseparable from Itto as they're quite literally made for each other. On one hand, Goro is at least low investment when it comes to his own build. On the other hand, although having a C0 Goro is enough to give quite the boost to Itto's damage potential, if you want the absolute best, then you'll want to get Goro's constellations. Thankfully, Goro's being run alongside Itto in this banner, but there'll be a lot of opportunities to get extra copies in future banners, so don't feel pressured to complete him now. Just know that a chunk of Itto's damage ceiling relies on Goro's constellations. However, Goro's presence also leads to Itto teams really wanting at least 3 Geo members in the party to take full advantage of his buff. The Geo roster itself can be limiting, and Itto's other best Geo teammates aside from Goro are Zhongli, who helps fix much of Itto's squishiness on top of increasing your team's damage with his shield effects, and Albedo to provide continuous off-field Geo damage. Both of these are 5 stars, so it's not the most accessible team comp out there, but undeniably, having either of these two is a huge help to composing your top Itto team. At the very least, you also have Geo Traveler, who's actually not a bad sub-DPS support for Itto, and Ningguang, who can at least sub-DPS and support as well. The good thing is, Geo teams are very straightforward to create and use. Due to the mono-elemental nature of Itto's teams, it requires little to no thought about your team's reaction management and elemental application. But this results in reduced shield breaking capabilities and a team damage ceiling that is certainly not the highest in the game, since you're relying on raw Geo damage rather than coordinating team reactions. Of course, those aren't necessarily deal breakers. Regarding the shield breaking potential, you can circumvent that just by knowing what shielded enemy you're up against and slotting in an elemental counter in the 4th slot. On his team damage not being the best out there, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It won't break meta records, but all things considered, their damage potential is still quite high and competitive with meta teams, and will clear hard content at generally acceptable speeds. So all in all, the biggest thing you have to be aware of when committing to Itto is that you're also committing to a Geo-heavy team in order to bring out the best in him. Damage potential and team building is one thing, but the gameplay too deserves praise. Even today, for me, Itto has been one of the most satisfying and fun units to play. He is mechanically easy to master and can be played in an unga bunga way. It doesn't feel as punishing if you can't execute his best combos since he still deals a lot of damage, becoming a great choice for casual players. Whereas other stricter DPSs result in a more noticeable DPS loss if you stray from their optimal combos. That being said, learning his best attack chains will still help him reach his damage ceiling. Setting him up with teammates is also practically very easy to do. While his burst requires him to stay and take a lot of field time to maximize damage, it's a good payoff. All you have to do is lay down all of your other sub-DPS's or support's relevant abilities before Itto, and once that's done, then just switch to him to dish out as much damage as he can. Basically, it's a playstyle that fits his character. Simple-minded, to a point even brain-dead, but at least he hits hard when it counts. Moving on to Itto's build considerations, it's a slightly mixed bag. For one, Itto has good but somewhat limited weapon options across different levels of investment. The White Blind is a perfect free-to-play choice that's not too shabby either, since it beats 5 stars like the Wolf's Gravestone or Unforged in terms of value. If you manage to luck out on a Skyward Pride, then you can stick to that instead. Then going up, the Serpent Spine is your best low spender option, only second to his signature Redhorn Stone Thresher. There's not much to think about Itto's weapons, as it pretty much boils down to, if you're free to play and have no better options, go with a White Blind. If you can afford and are willing to invest in the aforementioned weapon upgrades, then you'll get increasingly better results. The artifact farming is where it's more painful. If you want the best Itto, that means farming for either of his 2 best 4-piece sets, which are Husk of Opulent Dreams and Retracing Bolide, and you might as well go for the Husk for his absolute best. But if you're farming the Husk domain for the first time, then know that farming Husk pieces has its quirks. Characters who use the Husk set want defense stats, and while attack stats aren't exactly useless, you're really trying to target those defense roles. So if you have multiple characters who you're farming the Husk set for, they're going to be fighting over the same artifacts. Not to mention, the set is coupled with the Clam set, which is only viable as a set on Kokomi, Chi-Chi, Barbara, and maybe Kuki Shinobu, or other characters that could use the 2-piece effect. So if you're not farming for them, you're likely to end up with a lot of Clam pieces that'll end up as off pieces, or you can't use them in the meantime, or will be used as fodder. It's the complete opposite of the Shimenawa Emblem domain, which is just a universally efficient domain to farm. There's also the Bolide domain, but it runs into the same problems with the Husk domain in that it's niche and inefficient to farm as well. Still, if you're willing to spend the resin to get Itto good Husk artifacts, and even if you only manage to get a White Blind, then it will still pay off with you having the best Geo DPS by far. Thankfully, Itto is a pretty straightforward character and DPS, so these considerations are relatively short. But the way I think you should look at Itto is not by himself, but as a top tier Geo DPS whose high damage potential is brought out by his team comp. I personally wouldn't recommend you to pull for him if you don't want to commit to building a Geo team for him, whether now or in the future. Playing mono Geo teams is a case of want, not need. You'll have to accept that they'll rely on raw Geo damage instead of reactions, and won't be efficient against most elemental shields or armor due to their element, which can get frustrating if you force it. Even then, full Geo teams are really fun to play, still perform well when it comes to clearing content, and, have incredibly attractive characters. So if you're all in for the Geo life, Ushi and his Itto are a great pull. Let me know in the comments what you think of Itto, or if you're hoping to become an Itto haver sometime soon. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel for more Genshin Impact guides and content, and I will see you all soon. Take care!